apart from that, you also have to look at what is a hidden curriculum in a school. Now, when we say hidden curriculum, this is not something which people talk about. Right? Parents may not even be aware of such aspects.
Good morning. Welcome to the fifth and last episode of the second season of Beyond 8's Out of the Box sessions. We've had 4 weeks of extremely insightful discussions with experts, also wonderful people, on how to understand a child well and make high school choices that would enable their interests and strengths. Along that same line of thought, today we shall be looking into two most popularly discussed and debated parameters that drive high school choices: the quality of teaching in school and the curriculum that is being followed. For this, we have a very special guest, Dr. Gayathri Deepak, founder and director of Chetana, an organization that works with teachers to help and equip them to turn into facilitators of quality learning. With her, we have my dearest friend and colleague, Raji Naveen, founder of Beyond 8. I'm positive that this conversation will be a treasure trove of much needed insights on today's topic. So sit back, listen in, and enjoy. Over to you, Raji.
Thank you so much, Nandini, for that generous introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a balmy Saturday afternoon, and we are going to be talking about two of the most searched for and asked for questions by parents as they decide on the right school for their child. You guessed it right, teaching quality and curricula. And today, we have a very special guest with us to address these two topics. Dr. Gayathri Deepak, a dear friend, a stalwart thought leader in education, and founder director of Chetana. Dr. Gayathri is an educationist with about 3 decades of experience in education. She has worked in various roles, including being a researcher, lecturer, teacher trainer, school principal, consultant, and advisor. With a doctoral research in the field of curriculum and cognitive development and qualifications from the University of Cambridge in teacher training as well as in executive coaching. Dr. Gayathri has practically applied her learning to train and coach several school leaders and hundreds of teachers to transform schools into learning spaces that inspire children and teenagers to explore their true unlimited potential. And I think we also have a special connection with her. She was Naveen's teacher when he was doing the CIDTT training course, and very fondly remembers learnings from that session. Thank you so much, Gayathri, for stepping out of the box with Beyond 8.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here, Raji. I'm really grateful that we're meeting on this space. Thank you.
So, Gayathri, I would like to start this conversation with a poem. I think when it comes to teaching, you just become very emotional and you also become very poetic, right? So, this poem is by Maya Angelou. She is a civil rights activist and an American poet. She is also very deeply influenced by her teacher. And she said, "This is the value of the teacher, who looks at a face and says, there is something behind that, and I want to reach that person. I want to influence that person. I want to encourage that person. I want to enrich. I want to call out that person who is behind that face, behind that color, behind that language, behind that tradition, behind that culture. I believe you can do it, and I know what was done for me." I believe that these verses set the context for our conversation today, and I would love to hear your thoughts, Gayathri, on teaching and curriculum before we, go into the nitty-gritties of this topic.
Right. I think I'll start first with what is curriculum and then look at the teacher who transacts it. First of all, as we all understand, the written curriculum is what's given by a board of education. Right, so it means the subjects that are in the curriculum, the syllabuses of those subjects, the content, the goals and objectives of each, the teaching and learning approaches which the board advocates, and actually the learning experiences which the students receive by when the teacher transacts the curriculum. So while you can say this is a written curriculum and a school follows it, the curricular experiences are actually determined by how the school as well as the teachers interpret it. So that would be the curriculum in action, and we'll come to that a little later. No curriculum is expected to be transacted verbatim. It has to be contextualized, and that's how a school is going to. Every school differs in the way it contextualizes that, the way it reaches out to its particular learners who are forming the, let's say, the clientele of that school, if you want to put it in that manner, and they have to contextualize it. It's not meant to be actually taken verbatim and delivered word to word as it's actually given, because you can't do that. And that's where the role of the teacher comes in. Now, apart from that, you also have to look at what is a hidden curriculum in a school. Now, when we say hidden curriculum, this is not something which people talk about, right? Parents may not even be aware of such aspects. When you go to a school, you might find the student receives a timetable, for example. And every day, if you're going to have math and science early in the morning, what's the message you're conveying to the students, right? That early in the morning, and this is something which teachers or the school consciously builds, saying when the students are fresh in the morning, let's teach math, because that's the most difficult subject to grasp. And whether you say it or not, you're unconsciously already conveying that to the children. Right, so that would form part of a hidden curriculum. Similarly, if there's any instance of the different kind of toys which might be given in a preschool for girls versus boys, and that itself is a hidden gender bias, right? So again, these are all what would form a hidden curriculum. And there's also aspects which we have to consider. What is not taught? When something is not taught, though you would like to see it. For example, if you're going to live in a particular state, you might feel, why is the curriculum not talking about the history of my state? I live in this state and I'm proud of my culture, as we call it. But actually, I want to look at the history of my the state, the great kings or the great poets and people who lived in my state. Why is that not being shown in my curriculum? Right? Or I lived in a country where the textbooks would have parts of the reproductive system chapter blacked out. It's not that we didn't skip the chapter, but we would actually say, okay, maybe in this particular country, sixth graders seem too young to be talking about the human reproductive system. Let's push it to eighth grade, right? So then that would form the null curriculum, because you're not talking about it. Things that which should be done or which could be done, you're not putting that into your school curriculum. So that becomes what's the null curriculum. So there are so many aspects to what a curriculum is, and it's not just what the board gives you. So when we were talking about the teachers' effect on this, right? Because it is the individual teacher who actually transacts the curriculum. In any system, any school is only as good as its teachers, right? The collective action of its teachers, the collective expertise and the competences of the teachers are what matters, and so do the values and attitudes that every teacher brings in, right? So the role of the teacher, you cannot discount it, although we do understand that she's moved to become a facilitator of learning, an enabler of learning, but still she remains a central figure in a child's life.
I think that is a fascinating point and aspect that you bring to this conversation, Gayathri. The hidden curriculum, the null curriculum, and the fact that the school is only as good as its teachers, right? And these are the biases that we are all talking about also, right? The gender bias that you brought about, and then the bias of having music as the last period, but math and science as the first period. Such small, finer details. So a school may say that we are very holistic and we look at every child's development and we look at every aspect of development. But if that thought is not brought into the actions through these, I think you pretty much nailed it, right? You talked about the timetable. And if that timetable is not able to sort of, bring about what the curriculum is about, I think there is a huge gap that exists. And I hope that parents, as they view this conversation, try to hold these thoughts in mind about what am I seeing and what am I getting, what am I listening to, all these different aspects. As we go on to think about the role of the teacher, Gayatri, the role of the teacher has been constantly evolving, right? Initially, they were on par with God and were offered a very high level of relevance and reverence. Time passed and teachers became more trusted partners of parents to guide their teens, right? And today, teachers are slowly moving away from the rigid pedagogical system, and they are now facilitators who stand back and allow their learners to carve their own paths and think independently. While we see all of this transition happening, the pandemic that we are in today has literally brought us all to a standstill, right? And things have changed considerably. Usually, this would be the time where there would be a flurry of activities where parent-teacher meetings will be scheduled, parents will come and talk to the teachers, and things would be so different. But now, with the online model, especially in the time of this pandemic, parents have less frequent FaceTime with their children's teachers. And in times like these, how can they assess if they will be capable of enabling our children's journey? How do we deal with that, Gayatri?
Right. Just a couple of lines before we enter that question, because very interestingly, you did already mention that teachers have now become facilitators or enablers of learning. Again, when we say facilitators and enablers, that's again a very, very powerful term, right? We have made the shift already in very progressive schools. In fact, it's been happening for a few decades now. Some schools have caught on a little later, but the pandemic has actually accelerated that change.
Yeah.
So teachers are no longer considered providers of information. That aspect, to a certain extent, could still exist, but information is available at the touch of a button. So you just need to open your laptop, go onto the internet, and kids can easily access any information. So you can't say that the teacher is the repository of all knowledge, because first of all, a teacher doesn't give knowledge. Nobody can give somebody else knowledge. You construct your own knowledge, right? That's the basis of a constructivist approach to learning. Could be a social constructivist approach, because we learn from so many other people, so many other situations as we go through life, right? So this usually forms the basis of any good system of education, any curriculum, right? So the curriculum also does not expect the teacher to be the source of all information, nor does a curriculum ever say that she is the person who's the all-knowing individual in the center of a class. Far from it. Every progressive curriculum that we take does say that you need to make it learner-centric. So when we make it learner-centric, what's happening in today's scenario of online teaching is actually that it has become easier to make it even more learner-centric than in a physical setting. Though if the school failed to do that in a physical setting, in fact, this is an opportunity for them to actually learn and do that, because it's easier to customize learning now. So when we say that, what does a parent need to look out for? How is the child going through their learning journey? It's very easy. You just need to actually watch what the child is doing, right? Without interfering in the online class. If it's a synchronous session, just watch out for what the child is doing. Is the teacher catering to various learning styles, the interests, the abilities, the prior knowledge and skills of students that are taken into account? Do they have small discussions happening in breakout rooms? Does the student have a choice to choose what activity he would like to do or which breakout room to go into, right? Does he have a choice about how he will be assessed? What is assessment? It's just about expressing what you have learned, right? And as you are learning as well, to show the teacher your progress, how well you have understood it, how well you're progressing through it, whatever concept or whatever topic is being dealt with, right? So if as a parent you're able to check in on that, that itself gives you an idea about how the teacher is facilitating and enabling the child's learning journey. If you notice that she's just writing on the board and it's a camera placed in front of her and the children are still copying notes from the board, well, that's not the idea of leveraging the power of this online medium of learning, right? So are they using a variety of tools, or using a variety of platforms? Are students getting a variety of activities to engage in, both in a synchronous manner as well as asynchronously, which is offline, the kind of work that they do offline, where they're engaging with the topic or the project under consideration. Are they still able to reach out, talk to their friends, or at least on the phone, discuss when they're even not online with the teacher? How much of reading up are they being asked to do? Again, without overwhelming the child. And is the child enjoying the whole process, right? You just need to watch out for that. And yes, it's also important when the child is doing some offline work to keep a tab if he's using the internet to ensure that he or she is safe, right? That is a must for parents to do. If you do that regularly, I'm sure that you can easily track the progress of the learner. And it's that much easier now for a teacher to track progress of the learner and actually give customized feedback, and to have these regular systems of communication with the parents. In fact, I'm hearing from schools that they're enjoying it so much that when they do get back, they're saying, can we have some of these methods with the internet connectivity provided in every class, so that we can still continue to use some of these methods while we're all physically still there. So they are really seeing the benefit of it.
Absolutely. I think I take away many very important nuggets that you shared, right? You talked about how if we are going to do the same thing that we did earlier, then we are not going to be doing anything different, which is the chalk and board approach, where the teacher talk time is very high. You're also talking about how parents are now closer to the classroom, closer to the teachers, and closer to their own child's learning. That glass door has been literally broken because everything is so transparent now. So they have more data points. You talked about student choice, where in a classroom, are students being given that choice? Do they have the agency to own their, to make small decisions in that learning process? And you also talked about being self-directed. So is the teacher enabling the learner to take control of their learning process even outside of the online, which is the asynchronous mode of teaching that you spoke about? So I think in many ways, the pandemic and the online mode of teaching has helped us, has shaken us all up and helped us think about different ways where we can give a personalized, and you did talk about that also, right, where now we can actually give a personalized feedback. And we see that happening in our schools as well, right, where children are able to write a message to the teacher is responding, and it need not be done in a large class. It can be done even in the evening when the child is ready to talk to the teacher. So I think we are looking at bringing this new normal back into our classrooms, learning from these best practices, and maybe changing for the better once we go back to our real places. So in that context, what would you talk about as the ideal traits of teachers in this new normal, Gayathri? How are things likely to change for them?
Right. Again, when we said a teacher is a facilitator of learning, the amount of work that she puts in has actually increased. So let's not discount that. And with that, she has developed a lot of new traits, which could have already existed, no doubt. But then it has been, I think it's getting emphasized and accentuated to a greater deal now, right? So the teacher's role as a coach, as a mentor, has only increased now. So given that she or he is also facing the same kind of situations that we are in day-to-day life, and learning to balance her professional demands with also her personal life, what's happening is the quality of resilience, I think, is something which is extremely important as an attribute for every teacher. And then the ability and the willingness to learn, first of all, to unlearn, to relearn, to be a learner, not just in terms of technology, but also to adapt to new teaching and learning methods, which can be implemented both in an online session and also something which you can take back when you actually go back to your class. So that ability to learn new methods is something which is again been highlighted at this point of time. And every teacher enjoys teaching because she is a co-learner along the journey. That's when you can actually gauge the level of passion and desire to be in this profession. So a teacher who is willing to be a learner is one who's really not just surviving through this phase, but is flourishing in this phase. And also allowing her learners to flourish. So I would say it's resilience, it's empathy for the parents, the students. The amount of rapport which you had earlier, of course, matters a lot, because that would translate into the empathy for teachers as well. For students and their families during this time of the pandemic, and to reach out, to go that extra mile and to see, okay, if a child or a family is struggling with adapting to this mode of learning, how can I as a teacher actually help them? So it's not just about her self-learning, but also reaching out to the people who matter most, which is the students and their families, and to have that ability to empathize and to communicate that empathy. That's important. You might feel it inside, but then how good a communicator are you? How are you going to reach out to them? I think these attributes are extremely important right now. The resilience, the empathy, being a learner, and being an effective communicator. I think
I
that
think
really matters.
very strongly summed up, right? Because you did mention that teachers are going through a lot of stress these days because of having to, adjust to the new things, take care of their homes, and then also ensure the mental well-being of their learners. And unless they have been learners earlier, unless they have had the quality of resilience earlier and have been empathetic in their classrooms, it becomes a lot more difficult to suddenly develop these traits when you are post a new challenge, right? So those who have had a habit of these, like you said, will thrive and will also help their learners thrive. But then those who have not been able to, who have put maybe just the curriculum aspect and just exams at the forefront, for them it will become difficult, because in the online mode, and like you rightly said, they may even feel empathy, but if they have not understood how to communicate it with learners and how to connect with them, there is going to be a far bigger disconnect. And I think to learn how to learn, to be resilient, is something that will stand them in good stead in these changing times. And hopefully for many of them, this may have been that quick learning process too, even for those who didn't practice these earlier. This moment, it's almost like before an exam, how you will try to cram up everything. For all this may have presented that opportunity to make that shift and maybe find that confidence because of trying to doing new things and trying to find that confidence from that. So thank you so much, Gayathri, for that insight. And before we move on to curriculum, I know our viewers are all waiting for the curricula and the comparisons, but let us bring in parents and families as well into this conversation. And while we say that teachers have to do all of this, they have to change, they have to be empathetic, resilient, and we also know how now that the glass ceiling is broken and parents are all watching teachers are under the lens for every single moment, every single action. They are not allowed to even let their guard down even for a minute, because everything is being watched, right? So how can parents and families, Gayathri, extend that same empathy and that same understanding and be trusted partners to teachers in enabling their children's journey?
Right. Yeah. As you said, yeah, the parents and the families have to be understanding of the teachers too. They have to be understanding, first of all, of their own children, right? Because what the children are going through, the parents are seeing it, and they do have expectations of the teacher. How is the teacher going to help my child? But as they can see what's happening in a class, the teacher is trying to facilitate learning for a diverse class of about 30 learners, let's say, right? 25 to 30 learners, if it's a progressive school which really cares about the class strength. So it's not easy. If a parent is having a trouble just managing a couple of kids at home, you can understand the kind of, I wouldn't call it trouble for a teacher, because she is the professional in the class and she does know how to do it. So to wait and give that time for the teacher to actually be able to make that connect with kids, although this is remote teaching that's happening, right? To just have that patience, first of all, right? A teacher and a student always they have a special relationship. So although you may not see it instantly if you're observing just for 15 minutes, there is a deeper connect, especially if the student knows that teacher earlier on, has been with the teacher the past few years, has seen her in and out of class. There is already a good relationship between a student and a teacher most of the time, right? So the teacher usually builds on this. One thing I would request of all parents, and I've said this in other forums before, please refrain from any kind of negative criticism about a teacher or a school. However strongly you may feel about it, you may be right, but the way you express it matters. So please don't say anything negative about the teachers or the school in front of your kids, because it does leave a strong impact. And because the child doesn't physically go to school now, he doesn't have the opportunity to actually correct those impressions that he might have. If there is a complaint from this child and he does have the parent to reach out to and speak to him about, saying, okay, dad, this is the problem I'm facing in class, the teacher is not paying attention, whatever. I think as a parent, you just need to keep that calm and patience before you react, right? But do reach out to the school, do find out what's happening. Again, give the time for the relationship to sort it out, because very likely the next day the child is going to be fine about it. The teachers already realized and already corrected the situation. It could happen, right? So particularly with primary school and middle school children. Yes, you can also help the school and the teacher by reaching out and supporting the teachers by saying, okay, can we have a day of appreciation for the teachers? Talk to the school management about it. Can we organize some, perhaps a fun program, a Zumba class, or maybe if a parent is an expert or yoga teacher, can you talk to the management with some ideas that you want to actually interface with the school and provide some kind of support to the teachers in any way that you can. Maybe you're a mindfulness expert, or maybe you are a yoga trainer, whatever. Would you like as a parent to reach out and talk to the school management? Another thing is, by supporting your own child, you support the teacher, because be alert to any changes in the child's behavior, alert the teacher to it, because we really don't know if it just takes a few days of perhaps some kind of cyberbullying or something when the child can easily withdraw. Please be very alert to it. It may not be happening from school, it may be happening from outside. So I think parents need to immediately have that conversation going between the parents and the school as well. And be frank, be open about your child when you speak to the school. Try not to withhold any information. That itself would support the teachers as well as the school a great deal, and they're going to give it back and support the child, because so be honest, be open with the school.
I think very valid and valuable points, right? One is to be honest and open. And then you talked about to be patient. And you also extended that by saying that in case there are skills that you have, then you need to also support the school so that it is a completely, 360-degree support that the parent is also giving the child. So we have a bunch of comments and questions here, Gayathri, in our channel. And first of all, Bindu Unikrishnan, she talks about, she is thanking you for bringing out the point about biases that was at the beginning when you started talking about your initial thoughts. We have Mr. Surya Narayanan, and he says he's a teacher. He is working in a school that is really interested in the students. Wonderful, Surya. I'm delighted to hear that. How do we help a student who is not opening up at all, even separately? Your suggestions, please. And I think, Surya, you bring out this very, very, I think, a common question that many teachers are facing in the online world today. Gayathri, your thoughts?
Right. So if you'd happen to know the child before this online session started, it certainly helps. And that's why I did say get into a dialogue with the parent, first of all, to get to understand the child better. And I do think some children are quiet, let them be. Right?
Absolutely.
I let them be, it's okay. Yes, they may not participate much in class. That's perfectly all right. That's perfectly all right. We don't need to expect every child to communicate with their peers. We don't need to expect every child to communicate verbally with a teacher. But yes, if you physically can meet them in a class setting or in a school setting or even outside in a month or so, if things open up outside, and you're able to meet the parents and the child, that would greatly help. And I think it's just it is our expectations that we impose on children, and we think everybody has to meet these expected learning outcomes as we frame them, right? So I think those are our expectations.
I couldn't agree with you more, Gayatri. I just love the way you said maybe they don't want to speak because, like you rightly said, we don't even know what's going on in their minds, how they are processing this information. Some children may take longer to just express differently. And
It's just to add on, even with adults, some of the online interviews that I've been conducting, it's actually a big effort that I need to make with some people, where I need to draw them out. They want to attend an interview, they want to speak to me, but then they don't know how to express themselves, and you really need to push it to actually bring them out. This is adults. Right? So how much more difficult it might be for a child in a social setting, in a class, and that too online.
Absolutely.
Right? So that could be the challenge you're facing, Surya. It could be that.
And I think, Gayatri, you also mentioned, and we spoke about this earlier too, what are the relations that we have built before? And those are the things, what is the quality of the relationship between the teacher and the child and the students? And even if we, in Surya school, like he's saying, they're interested in the students, so they may have built a very strong relationship as well. But at the same time, like you mentioned, we need to listen to them more, and maybe they will take time to open up. We just have to be with them, stay with them.
If you do get a chance to meet them outside sometime, you could, if the school enables it.
Absolutely. Before we go on, we do have comments from Bhanu Shankar and Rama Lakshmi, but what we will do is please hold on to those thoughts. We have your questions with us. We will move on to the curriculum aspect of this conversation and then come back to the remaining questions. Curriculum, Gayathri, I think we all know there are hundreds of web results for which board of education in India is the best, and it shows a constant dilemma that parents have while deciding on the right curricula. You and I know that, and you touched upon this earlier, that curriculum and examination do not define a child. They do not define your life outcomes, and they do not make you who you are. And two schools following the same curriculum may be completely different because of their culture, right? Having said all of that, finally, we have still not moved out of a system that is based on, these certificates. And while knowing that that is the system we are in, parents want to know, okay, I know all of this, I understand this, that the world is changing and the world is completely different. There are people who are not even asking for certificates and all of that. But given today's scenario, what should I do? There are just so many opportunities available, options available, so many well-wishers giving me all of these inputs, but how do I process this information? So maybe I think we can look at this more intellectually, I think, Gayathri, because when we don't, we just talk about very factually about what the curricula offer. What is your thought, Gayathri? We are going to be talking about, I think, Cbsc, ICSC, NIOS, IGCSE and the IB curricula. So maybe we can have a short conversation broadly, and then we will go to the specifics.
Right. Okay. Yes, a parent who wants to look at what is the right school for my child needs to do a bit of research, and not just this research should be done by looking at the websites, consulting educators, educationists, and not just listening to peers and neighbors and well-meaning friends who are all in the same boat. So it would help if you do your research from authentic sources, right? And not, this is the difference between, in one of the key points, in fact, which we actually enable in children, it's a key objective in an English or a social science course. It would say differentiate between fact and opinion. It's as simple as that, right? So every parent, I would say, needs to be discerning about it. And the key word is, which is the right school, right curriculum for my child, right? And within a family, No two siblings even are alike. So you might want to send your kids to two different schools, and that's perfectly all right. Because if you really thought about what curriculum is right for my child, one child is different from the other, and you might end up choosing two different curricula altogether, right? If you've done your groundwork properly. It is a huge responsibility. These kids have been entrusted to us and placed in our care as parents, and we need to see what's best for them based on what's available to us and what was financially suitable to us as well, right? So let's look at some key points. First of all, when you look at curricula, just like you look at a school, look at the mission statement of that board's curriculum, the board itself and the curriculum, right? So what are the key words? Does it state anything about the learner profile? You will find boards saying we want them to be confident, we want them to be enterprising, we want them to be empathetic individuals. Even the board states this, is not only the schools, right? So please look into that. When we look at individual boards, perhaps we can dwell a little bit on that, because that defines the content, the syllabus, which will actually follow. So please be alert to those words. And then in the syllabus, look out for whether actually those words are being enabled by the syllabus. If you can do it to that extent, otherwise ask an expert, right? So look at whether the learner profile is clearly defined. For example, the IB has a beautiful learner profile, right? They have 10 words. Cambridge gives 5 words. So look at whether the board is stating the learner profile clearly. Then look at what are the subjects that are offered at every level of schooling. A board may not give curriculum from pre-primary ages or the preschool ages all the way to grade 12. Some boards begin only from grade 6 onwards or grade 7 onwards. Some of them start from grade 1. The recent changes which were made in the CISCE, which is commonly called ICSE, that actually gives you a curriculum starting from pre-primary itself, right? From preschool years, it is actually given a broad framework which schools can follow, right? This was a recent change a few years back. So look at the syllabuses that are offered, right? What are the subject choices that my child can get? Especially when you're moving into high school, most curricula will enable choice, right? When does that choice start? Does it start at grade 6? Does it start at grade 9? Does it start only at grade 11, right? What does the board enable? Each school might interpret it and offer it differently. What does the board enable? Because that will tell you how flexible the board itself is. Because the schools will have to work within the ambit of the regulations that the board places, right? So the amount of flexibility the school derives is actually from the board in terms of the choice of subjects that they're offering. So look at the subject choices that are available. And then even in the mission statement itself and also the individual subjects, you can look at what are the knowledge, skills, understanding, attitudes, and values the board enables, right? This is very, very important. Does the board itself enable positive attitudes and let's say secular attitudes, values? Does the board itself enable it, right? So please look at that. And what kind of skills? Are we talking about only academic skills? Is it also talking about socio-emotional skills? Does the board enable all this? Some boards don't. So let's be clear about that. So do your homework to this extent. So if the board doesn't enable it, it's totally up to the school to be able to do it by themselves, right? But if the board insists, then the school has no other choice but to do it, right? So do look into that. What are the choices in assessments? Are the assessments for learning, as learning, and off learning? Or does the board just rely on end of term or end of year exams, which are usually written exams? So when they're offering a choice of subjects, are there performance-based assessments even when it's assessments of learning? What I mean by this is if they have an arts course, arts and design course, how are they assessing it? Is there a performance-based assessment? If you're offering drama, if you're offering music, is there a valid recognized board qualification for it? Or is it just some marks or grades which a school needs to give? Right? So is how well are the co-curricular activities taken all the way through to grade 10 or grade 12? So is that a choice that your child gets by the board itself? And is that going to be a valid assessment from the board? Very few boards do that, right? So do you have that choice? And then you look at whether the school is offering it. So what kind of training programs does the board enable for its teachers? So they might give a beautiful curriculum, they might give a beautiful set of subjects, lovely choices. If the board does not insist on ongoing training, it doesn't insist on continuous professional development of its teachers every year, then it may not be a board that actually is going to support its teachers in terms of transacting the curriculum, right? It could be that, okay, they already know their job, let them do it. But that doesn't work anymore in today's scenario. Again, what is offered by the board, I've heard parents saying, oh, the curriculum is vast, it's so in depth, that there's so much of content. It's not about content at all anymore, right? Like we said earlier, skills, understanding, attitudes, values, it's not content. I've heard people saying that 15 years back, 20 years back. So at least now let's move away from it. A curriculum is not defined by the amount of content that it offers, right? So it has to be developmentally appropriate. There's no point putting in concepts which are going above the head of a child when he is 10 years old or 11 years old, putting in a lot of content, putting in concepts which are inaccessible to the child because he's not developmentally ready. So look at that as well, right? Not all boards can actually, though they might claim it, try to see if you understand it, whether it is developmentally appropriate. And how is the learner progress and achievement reported? Some boards are very prescriptive in the kind of report cards that should be given. There's no freedom or flexibility given to the school even. And every little thing might be measured, from discipline to punctuality to, okay, the behavior of a child, everything is graded. Which is, even the teacher finds that pretty contrived. So is that the kind of reporting you want? Or would you like something which is more descriptive, especially in early years, especially in middle school? So what is the kind of report card that you get, right? Or what is the kind of regular reporting that the board insists that the school should do, right? Or in fact doesn't insist that the school should do, because the more control there is from a board, the lesser flexibility a school will have. Does the board also definitely insist on engagement and involvement with the community? There are some boards which insist, yes, you might say socially useful, productive work. But if a board is not monitoring that or leaves it to the schools to interpret it in their own way, do it in their own way, it's not an integral part of the curriculum of the board. You see the clear difference. It's not an integral part. There are boards where engagement with the community is an integral part of the curriculum prescribed by the board. That is that much more. So then you will see the school that subscribes to this particular board has to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a parent looking out for that, you should watch out for this aspect as well. Yeah.
And listening to you, Gayathri, it just seems we finally somehow seem to say, oh, this curriculum, this will help you qualify for that examination, and oh, this curriculum has this subject which is not there. And that is such a very narrow approach to this whole matter, right? Our neighbor would have said, my child actually did so well because she is such a motivated person and she's rote learning is something that benefits her a lot. And you know what, you have to make children work hard, and only then will they be able to appreciate all the things that they have. So all of these complete misconceptions, right, and arguments that parents hear literally clouds their understanding and removes all that objectivity from this whole dialogue. You're talking about vision, mission statements, you're talking about subjects, you're talking about assessments. Hopefully those assessments, if they are replaced with portfolios, I think that would be when we talk about descriptive assessments, it's almost like if you tell a basketball player to write an assessment assessment of how they would play basketball as opposed to seeing
Authentic assessments.
how they do.
Absolutely.
So,
How
and like you
authentic
said,
is
art
assessment?
and music, right? Art and design. Instead of giving you a piece of work, if you were to just have them write a 1,000-word essay of how they will actually attempt to write, I think it requires all of us to really think about what we are doing, what we are asking of our children. Recently, I was reading this research on pedagogy of confidence, Gayathri, and it talks about how finally, if children are not going to feel confident and they are not going to have self-worth, every single measure that we use to measure them, they're just going to be failures in that aspect. And maybe we need to look at curricula that give that flexibility and that offer children more reasons to feel successful about themselves rather than stamp. I think Naveen Mahesh, who is the co-founder of Beyond Aid, he would say these certificates, only education system actually has the certificate of failure, which you're supposed to laminate and hold it and show it to the world, whereas no other system has a certificate of failure. So I think in this conversation, maybe we should also hope that curricula change from issuing these certificates of failure to actually, moving towards certificates that show progress and that show those beautiful, leaps that children have made in their own context. Having said that, maybe we can take each curricula and spend, we are already running, I think short of time, but maybe we'll just spend a minute each with each curricula. Maybe please have the infographic on the Cbsc curriculum, please.
Right. As you can see, it does say that it is one of the most common curricula in India, which is true, and it does have schools abroad as well. It has more than 20,000 schools, a very, very popular curriculum. They do give a lot of importance to teacher training. They do have separate syllabuses for life skills and value-based education as well. So you could question that, saying, shouldn't life skills and value-based education be integrated?
Yeah.
Please do. It's up to you to interpret that. They also have nice words which are put into their vision, which really matter, like we talked about earlier. It's about offering robust, vibrant, holistic school education, quality education. The words like, we would like them to be global leaders in an emerging knowledge society. And it also states that the board advocates continuous comprehensive evaluation with an emphasis on holistic development. Yes, in the light of NEP, some of this could change. It has already changed. It is moving towards certain aspects of the NEP which are very, very positive. So that's also happening. They also emphasize on a stress-free, child-centered education. And repeatedly, they have programs for their teachers about it. So again, when you're looking at this curriculum, I would say this does prepare students for competitive exams. It does.
Yeah.
You would find more CBSE students writing the JEE, the NEET exams.
Yes.
They do have an advantage, I should say. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
the amount of stress that you give to your child is entirely up to your family, the society, these circumstances. It's not from the board, right? And it
Absolutely.
should
And I
not
think
be from the school either. It should never be from the school, nor should it be from society. It's all
and when you
up
bring
to
about
us.
when you
Yeah.
bring about the concept of stress, Gayatri, I think I'd like to use this opportunity to appeal to parents also. Many times I've heard them say that, no, I don't want my child to go to JEE or IIT, go into the IITs. But if they push themselves to prepare for JEE, maybe they will land in a better institution, which may not be the IIT, but maybe one or two rungs lower. And I feel I really don't know how to appeal to them that in doing so, what you're actually doing is completely cutting down the confidence of that child. If, of course, if the child wants to be self-motivated and do this, obviously go ahead. But more often than not, parents feel that the children need to be pushed. Somehow we have this push mentality where we feel that they need to be pushed, and sometimes that is what is resulting in such a lot of mental illness in our children. And hopefully parents should take note of that. So
right. So it's not the fault of it's not the question of, oh, we should do away with entrance exams. Those are very stressful. That's the totally wrong way to look at it. It's just that everybody wants to sit in for a medical exam or an engineering exam, and then blaming that, okay, the national exam does not have questions which are suitable for children from this particular state, from that particular state. I think that's just, please let's remember, every curriculum in the country, which is a national curriculum or a state curriculum by a national or a state board, has to follow the national curricular framework. So there is no question of not having questions from my board, from our textbooks. It's not like that. And this is a competitive exam. When you're agreeable to sitting for that exam, first of all, make sure your child is ready for that. Period. Absolutely. If your child is not ready for it, don't make them sit for it.
And children announce, right? Children announce themselves. You already know are children wanting to do this or not. We'll quickly go over the rest of the curricula as well. It's already 11:50 and we should wind up. Is it possible to bring in the Nios curriculum, please?
Right, it would, sure.
The infographic on the Nios curriculum.
Right. The Nios is a beautiful system, actually a very beautiful system, which gives total flexibility to the learner. They do have a curriculum right from the primary grades onwards to reach out to people who didn't have access to education also. Right. So it is a lovely system which through which everybody in the country can benefit. And it is given not only in English, but in other languages also. So how would it benefit, let's say you want to go to you want to specialize in some other field, but you do want a formal education as well. You don't need to go to a school. If you are a learner who's able to work independently, you're responsible enough, you can choose the Nios system. And there is absolutely no restriction on the subject choices. Right, for grade 10, I think you can choose anywhere between, you can choose a minimum of 5, a maximum of 7, and you're done. Right, one language and the rest of it. So this kind of choice no board offers.
And they have those teacher mark assessments, and there is a lot of combination of assessments.
Absolutely. So it's a lovely, just for the sheer flexibility of what it gives. But yes, there are certain negative connotations which are not true. Where people do say, oh, an Nios curriculum, if you're going through that, you're not job ready, or the job market doesn't look at you favorably. I think that's something which should be dispelled. It's a myth, it's a stigma, it should be dispelled.
Absolutely. And we may not have time to discuss ICSE or IB. Maybe we will touch upon IGCSE curriculum and then sort of, close out this conversation.
Sure.
Maybe please have the IGCSE. Yes, thank you.
Right. Okay. That's another popular international board, more popular than the IB. So it makes sense to focus on this. It's given in about 170 countries, if I'm not mistaken. The exams are recognized even in India. So you don't need to think of sending your student abroad and saying, okay, I need to take the IGCSE curriculum only if I have to send my child abroad. Again, that's not true, because Indian universities recognize IGCSE. Yes, it does more than, let's say, even an ICSE board or a Cbsc board. The kind of critical thinking, the kind of inquiry-based learning which happens in a Cambridge curriculum is much, much more. Right? The level of application, the level of critical thinking that happens, independent thinking that happens is much, much more. Again, the flexibility that it offers in terms of choice of subjects is tremendous. At grade 10 level, you have a subject choice of more than 70 subjects that you can choose from. Depends on what the school gives. Another advantage, if you want to take up a subject by yourself and the school actually doesn't teach you that, but you want to appear for it, you can. Exams thrice a year, especially in March, which is done only for India. So all these are huge advantages of the Cambridge curriculum. Another misnomer that I would like, a misconception that I would like to actually bring up is people think it's an international school. It has to be very fancy. Not at all. They do not dictate the culture of a school. They don't dictate what social sciences curriculum or humanities curriculum that you're going to do. You can also use it alongside some national syllabuses if you want to. You want to teach Tamil from your local Tamil syllabus, go ahead and do it. They're not stopping you from doing that. If you want to teach local history, local civics and geography, do it. They're not stopping you. You can choose the school. It's up to the school to choose what subjects they want to do. It offers curriculum from primary levels onwards. 10 subjects in primary, no pressure on the school to choose all 10. Right. But it does give a proper curriculum right from primary, even for a subject as integrated as global perspectives. Yeah. Right?
Gayathri, sorry, I have to stop you there. Viewers are requesting that we need to, maybe shed some light on the IB curriculum as well. Can we please bring that infographic and spend just a minute on that as well?
This is again a very beautiful international curriculum. So much of depth of thought that's been put into framing it. Everything matches. When you talk about the learner profile, 10 aspects of the learner profile, every one of it a school should be able to actually bring about. So they're not talking just about knowledge, understanding and skills, but seeing it in action and actually seeing the learner transform. That's the depth of the curriculum. It's not for everybody, simply because it involves a great deal of teacher competence that's required. The IB board does enable it. It is very expensive. So you might find an IB school more expensive than a Cambridge school. The board charges more. It's not the school. Yeah. The board charges more in terms of fees that the school needs to pay the board, right? And so that's why it's more expensive. But the rigor is much more. Level of control from the board is more than the Cambridge, I should say, to be fair to the schools, because there's a lot of written and paperwork that they need to do for the curriculum itself. So they take their academics, the curriculum, the standards, which they want to make sure that every school follows very, very seriously. So there is a lot more control from the IB rather than from the Cambridge.
I think so.
Some key differences between IB and Cambridge.
I think, like you rightly
but again, sorry, I just want to put one more point. Yeah. And IB insists on an interdisciplinary approach, yes, especially in the middle school, and a transdisciplinary approach in the primary school. At the moment, there is no board which insists. Yes, with the NEP, it is changing. Let's see how that unfolds.
I think very well said, Gayathri, because I think at the end of it, the curriculum also requires different, economic conditions that parents are in. But a humble request to parents will also be to not choose a school based on the infrastructure. Are you paying for the infrastructure, or are you paying for the curriculum? Are you paying for the teaching learning process? So at the end of it, are their children learning? Are their children happy, and are their children having control? Are they having agency to actually embark on self-determined learning paths? Is something that would be a humble request to parents, and not to sort of be bogged down by peer pressure and make this decision. It's almost like if I'm wearing this piece of clothing, it's because I feel comfortable in it. It's that personal, right? So every family, every learner, it's such a personal, I think, journey. And to not be bogged down by what the world is saying. World is already moving. So maybe talk to educationists, maybe talk to people who are, sitting on the periphery of the circle. Sometimes when you're very close-minded and you're in the core of the circle, you may not even realize where the world is moving. So sitting on the periphery helps you at least get that world view and make an informed choice for your learners. We are not able to go ahead and discuss how to make this transition, if a parent does choose to switch boards. I think we did touch upon it earlier, where we said finally it's how the school is, how the school's culture is. Curricula, yes, there are many different things, but if the school's culture is about helping every child learn, and every teacher is sort of engaged with the learner in that journey, change may be a little more easier. Whereas the child's nature, the child's innate attitude and aptitude and skill and passion might also be reasons for that, transition to happen smoothly. So I think with that note, we do have a few thoughts, but I will have to take a rain check check here, and audience, we will respond. Dr. Gayathri will definitely respond to your queries that you have mentioned, and we'll ensure that we post our answers in Facebook. And I think it was a wonderful conversation with you, Gayathri. Something which we just relate to, a simple thing of, எவ்வளோ குழந்தைகள் இருக்கா ஸ்கூல்ல, எவ்வளோ டீச்சர்ஸ் இருக்கா, டீச்சர் ட்ரெயின்டா, அண்ட் என்ன கரிக்குலம், சிபிஎஸ்சியா, ஐசிஎஸ்சியாங்கிற, from being that simple, actually there is so much to think about. And at the end of it, children should be at the center. They should be driving this whole conversation. And parents, I hope that will take that next step towards looking out for their children and for their children's benefits.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much. Absolutely wonderful being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gayathri. And let me request Nandini, please take over from here. Nandini, we have extended our time way past 11:45. So thank you. Unmute, please. Unmute, please. Sorry, viewers, I think there is some technical problem, but thank you so much, Gayathri. Your thought process, the clarity, the succinct nature in which you spoke are just, I think, when we write the blog about this for all our viewers, it's going to have such wonderful nuggets of information. Viewers, you know that all of these infographics that we showed to you today, and also the one on ICSE, we will be putting it up in our blogs. I hope all of you have also, checked out our YouTube channel. This session itself will be available on Facebook and also will be available in our YouTube channel. Do subscribe to it. And as you all know, at Beyond 8, we believe that every child has the right to dream, and they should follow their pathways to beautiful passions that they are interested in. And I hope that this conversation and our earlier 4 conversations on children's well-being, on children taking agency, on being very mindful about their emotional health, and today when we talk about curriculum and teachers, has helped you take that next informed decision if you're looking for a change of school for your teenager. Looking forward to a season 3, and for all you know, maybe it will be you who will decide what our content is for season 3. Seasons 1 and 2 have been super success, and we thank you all for your cooperation and for being such enthusiastic participants in this journey of ours. Thank you so much. We will sign off now. Thank you, Shefali. Thank you for your kind words. And we will hope to respond to all the questions that are there in the Facebook page within a day. Thank you very much, viewers. It was wonderful having you over. We apologize again for this delay, but I am sure that there were such wonderful nuggets shared by Dr. Gayathri, and it will be useful for you. Thank you.